Morning, everyone. Good morning again. So today is Earth Day. So I'm going to talk a little bit about what that means and how we, what that means for our practice. A few decades ago, the day was designated, this day or someday right around this date was designated as a day to honor and remember the Earth, our mother. And it's important, it's essential to all of us to remark such a day. But our aspiration is always to remember this every day. But it helps for us to have a day that marks things. Today there are many public events. There's a lot happening down in Santa Cruz, downtown Santa Cruz. An interfaith ritual and all kinds of activities. These are meant to support the earth and all the species that are a part of it. Thanks, Mark. As well as to support our aspiration to see as clearly as we can what's happening and how we can respond. So we all know that we cannot exist without the earth. The question for us is how often we remember that, how we remember it, and how that shapes our lives and our attitudes and our actions. In other words, it calls us to remember and experience ourselves as we are and how we live that out. We are made of the earth. We are made with this earth, for this earth. Our very shape is determined by the fact that the earth holds our feet to the ground. That when we, for example, when things fall and we pick them up, we use hands that are made for that thing. We have eyes and ears and noses and tongues and a sense of ourself in space because of all the factors that make this world what it is. We see beauty because we're made to see it. You know, beauty isn't some abstraction. It occurs at the interface between our perceptual apparatus, our thoughts, and what exists, a sunrise. Why do we think something is beautiful? Because we're made for it. This is true for everything, for every aspect of our lives. So we can't even say we depend on the earth, because that makes it sound like we could take it or leave it. Now, I know that there are many people who are invested in every way to in the effort to fly up into space and find another Earth. And I suspect with all the money and energy that's going into that, it's likely to happen at some point. But I wonder about that sometimes. I think on the one hand, exploring and extending our human experience in this way is just fine, if it is paired with a deep caring for the home that we have. If not, it's apt to be based in a profoundly human-centric perspective, a perspective that defines being human in a way that is separate, independent from reality in which all life exists. According to the teachings of the Buddha, this vision of our life and of life itself is deeply distorted and at odds with the way things work and leads to suffering. But it appears to be a remarkably tenacious view, and one that is toxic to us and all beings. So regardless of whether people go and find another planet or want to live in space, if we want our lives to express our sense that we are an integral part of reality, we need to shift our view over and over and over again. So we ask ourselves, how do we honor that which supports and creates our every move, that which we are? There are many ways, large and small, by which we can bring this question into our lives. One way people do this is to acknowledge the grief we may feel when we face what is happening on this earth. This can be a very important step, as Johanna Macy and many other wise people have pointed out. And we also consider the need for that to be paired with a gentle and persistent cultivation of gratitude, a joyful heart, and courage. To return to a basic premise in our Zen teachings, that our sense of worth, the sense of value and joy we have in our lives, is based on the fact of being alive, not on what we accomplish according to some measure we have come up with. If we simply stop and take a look around, our day-to-day lives will make this abundantly clear. We call this no gaining idea or not knowing. So we have goals, objectives, and clear aims that we care deeply about. But we need to keep that in perspective and take care that they arise from being in respectful relationship with all beings. Wisdom is our guide, a clear-eyed wisdom that knows we cannot know everything. Often we don't know much at all, but we commit ourselves to a way of life that is life-giving for all. We listen deeply and act in concert with all beings for the benefit of all beings. We find meaning and a sense of fulfillment in that life. Without gratitude, a joyful heart, and the living courage that comes from right relationship, it is very easy to become morose, to sink, and to circle around our own human feelings about the situation. This, in a sense, is very human-centric. We circle and circle and circle around our own feelings and lose sight of others. and of the source of energy that makes it possible for us to do what we can with what we have. So it's really important that we find ways to reorder our perspective, to find health and energy and support in our lives in order that we might live in and respond to the world as it is, not the one we construct in our heads. So one tried and true way to do this is to sit down, to feel the fact of your butt on the floor or the chair, to allow the spinning thoughts that can pull us away from our concrete reality to spin off, not to throw us off center. This is an act of coming home, a physical act that we can trust our lives to. We do not need to analyze it or weigh its worth. We don't ask what it can do for us. We simply sit down. Allow the human body that you are to be there. Allow the breath to be the breath, the sounds to be sounds. To do this is a subversive act. It is an act that occurs outside the definitions that dominate our world. It is an act of faith in reality itself. Just let it be for a moment. Just let it be. The human that can do this is the human who is willing to be right-sized with regards to reality and all other beings. It is an act of humility, of being willing to listen, of being willing to be taught, not carrying forward all our agendas and rightness or righteousness and aggression. It is also not a passive act. It is one of great courage and a certain amount of sacrifice. We say in this act, I am willing to let go of my agenda for a moment, set down all my ideas and simply be here with all of reality. Then I will get up again. I'll go about my business of being in this world as best I can, but grounded not in abstraction, assumptions and ideas, but in the world as it is. We can also do this in our everyday lives. We can say, how much do I pay attention to what is in my hands? How much do we live in the world as it is? Not just what we think. How much do we experience our gratitude for what we eat, wear, and breathe? We wonder, how is that gratitude cultivated and expressed? Gratitude is not guilt. It's not inner crumpling or apologizing for existing. There is a dignity in gratitude. We know, we receive, and we give. We have a role to play, and that role is needed. Perhaps, as I sometimes think, humanity is a virus, or as the teacher of a friend of ours says, humans, number one bad animal. I often think that, I have to admit. But we are here, and we have a chance to act with dignity and give dignity. We can be a part of things in a wholesome way. To discover this way of being, we ask, how do we build and support within ourselves and our community these attitudes? How do we express them in our actions? This attitude of simple reverence, an orientation in which the world and everything of it is regarded as equally worthy, all worthy of respect and care. A world in which This is a central value, is the world that many wise teachers point us to. And it is certainly the world of Dogen Senji. Dogen tells us that all beings, sentient and insentient, living and non-living, human, animal, plant, rocks, coffee cups, toilet bowls, trees, compost heaps, oceans, computers, t-shirts, all Buddha nature. He says that he regrets that most people, quote, do not realize that the universe is proclaiming the actual body of the Buddha, unquote. When we can only perceive what is made of our ideas and our projections, we do not perceive and act with, as he says, Buddha's shape and form and voice in the landscape. Buddha's shape, form, and voice in the landscape. We cannot see or appreciate this truth when we fall into the habit of defining reality only in terms of our own needs. When we regard other beings, sentient and non-sentient, only in terms of how they relate to us, what they can do for us, how can they be used by us. This is something that we do all the time. It is a part of the makeup of delusion, and so we must take care to unseat it, particularly if we want to be good citizens of the world we live in, active participants in a healthy and vibrant world. Our practice requires that we listen to what all others have to say to us without immediately slotting it into our preconceived notions of reality. This is true with other humans and every other aspect of reality. This means we release our minds and hearts from the prison of self-centeredness. Dogen says, even rocks preach the Dharma, and they do it in rock voices. We may not be able to understand rock voices, but that doesn't mean they do not exist. It does not mean that we cannot be moved by them, taught by them. And perhaps if we spend enough time listening with the aim to hear, we may begin to understand a little bit of rock voices. In a way, this is what we do when we let go of our self-centeredness and just allow ourselves to be. When we walk out and allow what we call nature to touch us. What is nature, after all? But us, all of us. Dogen tells us that the sutras, the words and expression of the Buddha are, quote, are the entire universe, mountains and rivers, the great earth, plants and trees. They are self and others, taking meals, wearing clothes, confusion and dignity. There is nothing that is not included. And our practice is to live a life with that truth at the center. Then the entire world is our teacher. The entire world speaks to us of what is most true, how to live, who we and all beings are. Dogen states, when you endeavor in right practice, the voices and figures of streams and the sounds and shapes of mountains together with you bounteously deliver 84,000 gathas. Just as you are unsparing in surrendering fame and wealth and body and mind, so are the brooks and mountains. This is the spirit of the way and our relationship in and to the world. And this is not just a private experience. When we see in this way, we find a way to act and support this Buddha world. We face our world as it is, directly, and find a way to live. This is often not easy. It can be both beautiful and heartbreaking at the same time. And when we pay attention, we can feel despair and grief. That is part of the reality that we live in now. But it need not define or overwhelm us. For right there in that same reality is a way to live that is broad and deep and strong enough to include it in all the rest of life. When we remember who we are, when we return to the teachings, a way of being that invites gratitude, a joyful heart, and courage can take root and grow. By living in this way, we are dedicated to this world. We have aims and hopes, and also hold them with light hands, willing to be taught by other humans, by other living beings, by the earth itself. So this is the way of the Bodhisattva, one who dedicates themselves to realizing the teachings with all beings. It requires that we engage without perfectionism, without the tyranny of thinking we must do it all, or we must be able to see the end game. Beings are numberless. I vow to say them. To fully engage with that vow, we must both renounce our need to be the one who knows and find the joyful mind that Dogen tells us is one of the hallmarks of our practice. The joyful mind that simply devotes our life, our energy, our being to the way with a clear eye and a caring, light heart. So I want to close today with a few poems from a farmer, environmentalist, and great poet named Wendell Berry. He tells us something about the way of being human and the way of all things. And then we'll have a short ceremony to honor the earth. So listen to these words. This is called A Song Sparrow Singing in the Fall. Somehow it has all added up to song. Earth, air, rain, and light, the labor and the heat, the mortality of the young. I will go free of other singing. I will go into the silence of my songs to hear this song clearly. Somehow it has all added up to song. Earth, air, rain, and light, the labor and the heat, the mortality of the young. I will go free of other singing. I will go into the silence of my songs to hear this song clearly. This is a section from a longer poem called, it's very much long, The Handing Down. He is in the habit of the world. The world has finally worn him until he is no longer strange to it. His face has grown comfortable on him. His hat is shaped to his way of putting it on and taking it off. The crown bordered with the dark graph of his sweat. He has become a scholar of plants and gardens, the student of his memory, attentive to pipe smoke and the movement of shadows. His days come to him as if they know him. He has become one of the familiars of the place, like a landmark the birds no longer fear. Among the greens of full summers, among the shadows like mountains, he makes his way down. Loving the earth, he will become. Again, he is in the habit of the world. The world has finally worn him until he is no longer strange to it. His space has grown comfortable on him. His hat is shaped to his way of putting it on and taking it off. The crown bordered with the dark graph of his sweat. He has become a scholar of plants and gardens, the student of his memory, attentive to pipe smoke and the movements of shadows. His days come to him as if they know him. He has become one of the familiars of this place, like a landmark the birds no longer fear. Among the greens of full summer, among shadows like monuments, he makes his way down, loving the earth he will become. And just a couple more. This is called Sabbath 1999, number 2. I dream of a quiet man who explains nothing and defends nothing, but only knows where the rarest wildflowers are blooming, and who goes and finds that he is smiling, not by his own will. Sabbath 1999, number 2. I dream of a quiet man who explains nothing and defends nothing, but only knows where the rarest wildflowers are blooming, and who goes and finds that he is smiling, not by his own will. And one of my favorites I've read before that tells us the way of things. This is called the law that marries all things. The cloud is free only to go with the wind. The rain is free only in falling. The water is free only in its gathering together, in its downward courses, in its rising into the air. In law is rest if you love the law, if you enter singing into it as water in its descent. Or song is truest law, and you must enter singing, it has no other entrance. It is the great chorus of parts. The only outlawry is in division. Whatever is singing is found, awaiting the return of whatever is lost. Meet us in the air over the water, sing the swallows. Meet me, the redbird sings. Here, 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 here. Again, the law that marries all things. The cloud is free only to go with the wind. The rain is free only in falling. The water is free only in its gathering together, in its downward courses, in its rising into the air. In law is rest, if you love the law, if you enter, singing into it as water in its descent. Our song is truest law, and you must enter singing, it has no other entrance. It is the great chorus of parts, the only outlawry is in division. Whatever is singing is found awaiting the return of whatever is lost. Meet us in the air over the water, sing the swallows. Meet me, the redbird sings. Here, 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 here. I think this poem is about the Dharma. Tells us about the Dharma as the law of how things are. So I think this is the spirit that will sustain us, guide us, free us to enter singing, as Wendell Berry points out, or Barry Roshi, as I like to call him. Free us to do what needs to be done with all beings and not lose heart or our spirits in the doing. Thank you very much.